I didn't think the Democrats could pick a candidate worse than Eric Adams, but here we are. Yeah, New York City is screwed.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today.
Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Last night, people in New York were shocked when they heard that Zorhan Mamdami wound up winning the Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. Now, Zorhan Mamdami was not expected to win as related to the whole process of ranked choice voting. No, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was expected to win by double digits. However, Zorhan Mamdami came from behind and basically wound up winning the whole New York primary as related to ranked choice voting. And as he wound up winning, it basically shook up not only the state of New York politics, but also wound up shaking up the sad state of affairs as related to the entire Democratic Party. Now, Andrew Cuomo was basically expected to win this race very easily, and his whole campaign was basically looking like it was going in that direction until the last few days. And after he wound up again with Zorhan Mamdami taking a victory from behind, it basically again wound up sending a shockwave as related to the entire landscape of not only New York politics, but the politics of Democrats all across the country. Now, what happened here as related to this upset victory is that it shows the complete collapse of leadership and a disconnect between those in the Democratic Party. It shows a complete disconnect as related to the Blue Party as between its older leadership and these young progressives who have basically seeing the nation going into completely different directions. Now, Andrew Cuomo was basically picked by the members of the Blue Party to try to shore up the imploded leadership of Eric Adams, who I call the cream of wheat man in New York City. Now, Eric Adams basically was elected to be the second black mayor, but due to his incompetence, he basically wound up running the city straight into the ground, not to mention winding up getting indicted on federal charges of bribery and corruption. And this made it where many people did not trust Eric Adams, and eventually those in the political machine, like Kathy Hochul, and those like Carl Heastie and Andrea Stewart Cousins, who control New York politics, decided to go out here and try to recruit a new candidate to run for mayor of New York City that was part of their machine. Unfortunately, what happened with them is that they did not develop anybody new and fresh to be a face to run for mayor, and they had to go out here and scavenge up Andrew Cuomo and try to dust him off and clean up all the dirt as related to the numerous sexual harassment cases that had led to his resignation as governor of New York. And what the political machine wanted to do was go out here and take this cleaned up Andrew Cuomo and basically try to prop him up to be a substitute to replace Eric Adams. Unfortunately, what happened was, even though he had strong poll numbers in the beginning, the other members of the Blue Party who wanted to become the next mayor of New York basically chipped away at him as related to debates. And as this was going on, Zorhan Mamdami basically came out here and made a lot of promises to do different things and take the city in a new direction. And as he came out here, he basically wound up getting an upset victory over Andrew Cuomo, who was not the best candidate for mayor at all. No, but it just shows the complete failure of leadership at the top as related to the overall Blue Party, and shows me what happens when you have baby boomers who basically take their positions in society for granted, because this is also a generational issue, because basically it shows how the baby boomers did not do their jobs in preparing the next candidate, and that's why we have that huge gap after the failure of Eric Adams' leadership for taking over to run for mayor of this city. The real problem is that many of these baby boomers basically they took their position in society for granted, and that's really ironic because Zorhan Mamdami basically is one of these candidates who's either a millennial or a Gen Z, and basically he's one of these guys who came from the baby boomers. And again, the baby boomers, because they basically had everything given to them, did not appreciate the political system given to them. And that's why they basically had to scrape up an Andrew Cuomo to basically have a governor running for mayor, hoping to run on the campaign of making things right. But the great irony is that he possibly wound up making things worse, because he showed that he was a part of an established old guard of basically incompetent leadership that we basically saw start to stumble as related to things as far back as 2020 with the election of Joe Biden as president of the United States. Now, the entire Blue Party has been in a state of decline ever since about 2020, where they basically, again, did not have a candidate ready to go against Donald Trump as related to his second term. And since they did not develop and groom a candidate to go out here and be able to run against Donald Trump, again, after the loss of Hillary Clinton in 2016, and I really would go back and say we really didn't have a good candidate since 2016. No, we haven't been grooming and developing candidates to basically run for office like the old blue machine used to do. Now, the old blue machine used to go out here and develop and groom candidates and prepare them for these jobs to run in elections, but they haven't been able to do that. And this is where we've had upstarts like Barack Obama come in and basically take the job. And then we had the Hillary Clinton thinking she could take the job. But the whole thing is none of these people were really ready to take on the role of the executive branch. And without people in that ability to being groomed to take that job, we're basically in a place where we have a big leadership issue. And that was shown as related to this primary for mayor of New York. This is what was shown here, that the New York machine has not been developing and grooming candidates to basically take over jobs, and that's why they're getting these upsets like we got back into, as far back as 2008 with Barack Obama and 2016 with Donald Trump. And basically, they're trying to scrape up guys like Joe Biden and Andrew Cuomo to try to fill in these voids. But if you don't have people ready to go out here and do the job, then you wind up getting people who basically can't do the job and in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, because with these upset victories like with Donald Trump in 2016, and basically with Eric Adams as related to this, for the last primary, basically you have people who are not ready or qualified to do the job, and they wind up making a mess before the election or the election process. Now, some people would say that the whole ranked choice voting system that New York adopted basically is one of the reasons why we have all these upsets, because the ranked choice voting system basically is the thing that makes it where instead of us having a straight primary like we did back in the 80s and the 90s with David Dinkins and Rudy Giuliani, where you have a Democrat candidate and a Republican candidate, you have multiple candidates. And what happens is, as they get ranked, this is the person who gets the nomination if they get 50% of the vote. Again, this whole ranked choice system was basically something that they basically thought they could rig to go out here and be able to, again, win elections for their favored candidate. But what's happening is this is like the second or third upset victory as I see it. I mean, Eric Adams back in 2021 was not expected to win, but he wound up upsetting people like Catherine Garcia here in New York. He wound up upsetting people who they expected to be able to take the job and basically run the city. That's what they thought Catherine Garcia was going to be able to do. But what happened was Eric Adams wound up upsetting things because he was the black candidate. And again, people thought, oh, a second black mayor would be like David Dinkins. But the great irony is he was just like David Dinkins in helping run the city straight into the ground. And due to his incompetence, he wound up making New York a worse place than under Bill de Blasio, who basically had run the city into the ground with his far left progressive ideas. And the great irony here is that with the nomination of Zorhan Mamdami, basically we're in the middle of what seems to be a vicious cycle as related to New York voters, a vicious cycle of New York voters not really understanding the political process or the subtle politics transpiring around them. No, what we have here are voters voters who basically don't seem like they really understand the entire political process or what it means to go out here and try to find a qualified candidate to run for office. Because after looking at this upset victory, I see it as something that's going to be worse for New York City than life under Bill de Blasio. Because Bill de Blasio, while he was an ideologue and just a completely, again, guy driven by far left ideas, he was incompetent in the fact that he basically, again, just did not understand how politics worked and how to make things work for people. This is why he was supporting things like sanctuary cities and bail reform. And then we got the cream of wheat man after him, Eric Adams, who basically was looking to, again, use this job as a way to bootlick and pander his way into a higher position with the Biden administration, and when his whole plan to use migrants to basically, again, bluster his ability to, again, get another job blew up in his face, and he turned on Joe Biden. This is what led to him becoming federally indicted and him winding up, again, putting the city in a sadder state of affairs than de Blasio. But what I fear is that things will get progressively worse under Zorhan Mamdami, because Zorhan Mamdami is an example of just the complete failure of the Blue Party to groom qualified candidates. He's a far left socialist ideologue who basically is someone who not only comes in with really dysfunctional ideas, but he also comes in without experience, because this is just a 33-year-old guy. He really doesn't understand how politics works as related to things, and he's making a lot of big promises that I know he definitely can't deliver on. I know he's making promises on things that cannot be delivered on, like when his whole idea of talking about, again, freezing the rent. That's not possible to be done because rent is not controlled by the mayor. It's controlled by the Rent Guidelines Board. And while the mayor appoints some members of the Rent Guidelines Board, they don't have that ability to freeze the rent on their own. No, they don't have that ability to do that. He can't promise to deliver on that. And he also makes promises as related to free bus service, something he also doesn't have an ability to deliver on, because the MTA is run by Kathy Hochul and is run by a guy who I forget his name. He's a British guy, but the whole thing is that those are state organizations. Again, MTA is a state organization, and the MTA basically is dealing with constant fiscal budget deficits, so they can't afford to give you a free bus. So he's promising things that can't be delivered on, but he's saying the things that people want to hear. I mean, yeah, I know things are hard for most New Yorkers. I know the rent is high. I know the price of groceries has gone up, and these are pocketbook issues that Zorhan has basically capitalized on. But this guy basically is, again, writing a check with his mouth that his ass would not be able to cash on after Election Day. And that's where many New Yorkers show how politically naive they truly are, because all they're hearing is free stuff from dude. All they're hearing is, I'm gonna get some free stuff. But the whole thing is that free stuff costs things, and this guy basically is so backwards. He's sitting up there talking about, oh, he's going to raise taxes on the wealthy and tax the rich, but he doesn't study New York history the way I have studied New York history, because I've been living in New York ever since I was born. I've been living here for 51 going on 52 years, and I can tell you what happened during the era of Abe Beame and Ed Koch, when people in New York thought, oh, we're going to go out here and tax the rich, like with Andrew Cuomo's father, Mario, when he was governor of New York. There were grand plans to tax all of the wealthy. Well, what happened was those rich people wound up moving out of New York, and they basically left New York. And those companies and businesses that were here wound up leaving the country when they wound up getting those taxes, and wound up leaving, and that led to the revenue deficit that led to the fiscal crisis of the 70s, and also led to a fiscal crisis that David Dinkins had to deal with way back in 1990, all the way up until the near end of his term in 1993. And the only way we got out of that hole as related to taxes was when Rudy Giuliani and George Pataki actually decided to go out here and start cutting many of the taxes that basically de-incentivized most people from being able to invest in New York City. Many people wanted to invest in New York City, but because of all of the red tape and regulations, they decided not to come to the city because it was too expensive. Moreover, there was so much crime that was out of control because the whole system was basically, the criminal justice system was compromised by dysfunctional policies and leftist judges in the 70s all the way to the 90s, and all of that was basically cleaned up. And sadly, what happened was people basically didn't appreciate the work of a Rudy Giuliani and cleaning up the city and getting it to be investable. And what happened was we had these leftists like Michael Bloomberg come in, because while he ran as a Republican, he was a leftist. And again, he basically made the city, again, untenable. And what's happened here is that people who don't know the culture of New York City, they're buying into the rhetoric of a guy like Zorhan Mamdami, not seeing that he is just a repackaged Bill de Blasio, who was a repackaged Ed Koch, who was a repackaged Abe Beame, repackaging the same dysfunctional policies. And because many new people are not veteran New Yorkers like myself, they can't see where they're going, because the main reason why Zorhan basically won is because he basically got a lot of these transplants who came here, who basically are these hipsters or these people who came to New York thinking that they were going to live their big dreams. And these young people, again, they didn't understand the entire overall politic as related to New York, and they don't understand that with this Zorhan guy, he's basically on a road where if he does get elected, he's not going to be running the city in a different direction. No, he's going to follow down Bill de Blasio's far left road, and that far left road basically is going to take the city back to the hellhole days of the 1970s and 1980s, which we are currently in. I mean, we've basically got a hellhole situation because of far left policies like defund the police, bail reform, which basically makes it where people who commit crimes can just have it as a revolving door, and all sorts of dysfunctional policies that have made life here in New York City untenable compared to what it was in the 1990s under Rudy Giuliani's Quality of Life initiative. Now, I do not really like Rudy Giuliani the same way I don't like Donald Trump, but I can look at his results, and living in New York from in the 90s and compared to the 80s, and in the 90s it was a lot safer. I mean, you could ride the train at midnight. You could go out here and work nights and not have to worry about, again, somebody coming after you. And basically, you didn't have to deal with all sorts of issues with people, again, just laying in the streets or acting out. I mean, it was a much safer time here in New York. It was a much safer time. The quality of life was much better. And compared to today, where you've got just nothing but chaos, you got this guy, again, promising high apple pie in the sky dreams, taking a page yet again from the Obama playbook, because that's what Barack Obama did. He basically made big promises, but could not really deliver the hope and change. And Zorhan Mamdami is the same thing as Barack Obama, which really shows, again, the complete failure of the entire Blue Party as related to leadership. Again, they can talk a good game, and Zorhan Mamdami is a good talker, but he doesn't understand how the process works, and that's why he's one of the worst candidates to come out of the Blue Party, which shows the complete leadership of the Blue Party being a complete failure. Again, they are a complete failure at the top, and this is why we've got these upstart candidates, who are not, again, able to go out here and lead effectively, because you've got a disconnect between the baby boomers and their children, the Gen Z, or these other people, because I believe he's a Gen Z. I don't think he's a millennial, because millennials are in their 40s right now. I believe this guy is a Gen Z, and again, he like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who runs this district and is running it straight into the ground, basically, again, is caught up in a world of ideals, disconnected just like their baby boomer parents, disconnected from reality, disconnected from the people, disconnected from the world around them. that's what I believe Zorhan Mamdami is. And again, his upset victory will be a loss for New York residents who go out here and vote for this guy. And again, sadly, what's going to happen here is that many of those New Yorkers are just going to have to learn the hard way. They're just going to have to learn the hard way as related to things. They're going to have to learn, again, the hard way about life because, again, with many of these people, whether it be the baby boomers or the Gen Z, they have been given so much that they don't appreciate what they have, and they live in a world of high apple pie in the sky dreams. They don't live in a world of reality. And again, this is why the Blue Party is losing, because it's not run by people connected to the people. And sadly, a lot of these people, they really, again, don't see the seriousness of this situation. And as related to things, this is where black voters have to understand this is not our place to step in because there's nothing tangible on the table for us. No, the folks here have to learn a hard lesson as related to dealing with those who caught up in ideals and can't see the real situation that they have created. I mean, the Blue Party, as I see it, basically is in a complete wreck at this point. It's a wreck at this point because they don't know how to develop and groom candidates to basically take positions as related to representing their areas. No, in the New York State, they basically show how incompetent they are because you should have had a guy on deck ready to take over after. In the case of Eric Adams, you knew this guy was falling apart again 2 years into his whole situation. You knew that this guy was a failure as related to the entire migrant crisis he created. You knew he was, again, a loose cannon that basically was a liability. You knew he was a problem that you needed to deal with. And instead of you developing and grooming a candidate basically to represent your interests, you went out here and thought, oh, we can just dress up an Andrew Cuomo and he'll do the job. But he wasn't, again, fit to do the job. He was tarnished, and you couldn't rock the tarnish off. And now you've got somebody who's going to be worse than Andrew Cuomo because this guy not only is working on the far left as related to progressive socialist agenda, he's basically a guy who, if he's elected, basically will possibly be the biggest embarrassment to the party next to Bill de Blasio. I mean, his inexperience and incompetence basically is going to be a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, this guy basically does not have the experience to be able to be qualified to be a mayor, just like when it came down to other candidates that they picked, again, not qualified to be that candidate, to have that experience in public administration. But the New York political machine, again, like I've seen for many years, I mean, like in the case of Charlie Rangel, again, you have these people who basically think they're going to go on forever, and now we're seeing that they basically are taking the party on the road to never getting elected because they don't really understand, again, in order to, again, develop your candidates, you have to develop your candidates early on. You have to groom your candidates and prepare your candidates in your agenda. And this is a lesson for us foundational black Americans. Again, when it comes to a black agenda, we have to always be on point. And again, when we start entering the political process, again, we have to have our agenda on point and groom our candidates in our agenda. And again, so that we can get tangibles for ourselves, we have to have our candidates focused on our agenda so that we won't wind up getting a loose cannon or a chaotic situation like the Blue Party is having right now. The Blue Party is in the middle of a chaotic situation because you had a generation of baby boomers who didn't really appreciate what was given to them. And since they didn't appreciate what was given to them, they basically have tossed everything away and now are about to lose everything for generations on after each other, because after this guy basically makes a wreck of New York City, you possibly will be seeing New York going red, possibly in the future. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct Imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos taking politicians to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure.
Pick up your copy of the steamy Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.